Hi everybody, it's Laura from Lawrence Branch, and today I am going to share some facts about biographical figures that have to do with the December holidays. And so the the personalities that I have chosen have been inspired by a series that we have in the Youth Services Department, and you could look that up on www.whohq.com, and that will give you information about these. But all of our branches have these, and they're very popular. So if there's a young person in your life, they would enjoy reading these, and we as adults actually enjoy reading them as well. So my first subject is Dolly Parton. Again, the facts that I'm giving you, I'm reading and excerpting from other sources, and they did not come from these books. This was just my inspiration for who to do. So for Dolly Parton is undeniably the queen of country music, but she's also the queen of Christmas television specials. Back in 1984, the release of Dolly's first holiday album, a joint effort with Kenny Rogers titled Once Upon a Christmas, was tied to a television special that aired on CBS, Kenny and Dolly, A Christmas to Remember. Her second Christmas album in 1990, a solo effort titled Home for Christmas, was similarly accompanied by a special that aired on ABC. Over the years, Dolly has also starred in several made-for-television Christmas movies that she's written and recorded original Christmas songs for as well, including A Smoky Mountain Christmas and Christmas of Many Colors, Circle of Love. And last year, she debuted her first original for the Hallmark Channel, Christmas at Dollywood. This year, Dolly is back with a new Christmas album, her first in 30 years, titled Holly Dolly Christmas. The record features a mix of holiday classics and original country tunes, as well as lots of duets with Dolly's famous friends, including Michael Bublé, Jimmy Fallon, Miley Cyrus, and Willie Nelson. Apparently, the album was inspired by Burl Ives and his song A Holly Jolly Christmas. He used to be on all my Christmas specials all through the years, Dolly told Billboard. I think of him as Mr. Christmas. And just this morning when I was doing research for this, I noticed that it was a tweet or a newsfeed item. Obama regrets not giving Dolly Parton a Presidential Medal of Freedom. And that was, questions we're pretty sure Barack Obama has never been asked before. The former U.S. president said it was a screw-up that he didn't give the Presidential Medal of Freedom to Dolly Parton. And she's done, wonderful humanitarian things this year with COVID. All right, let's move on. Next one that I've got here. How about we do Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart next. This is, did Mozart celebrate Christmas? In the time of Mozart's youth, the second half of the 18th century, Christmas was most certainly one of the most important holidays in Catholic Salzburg. We do not know what the celebration of Christmas would have looked like in the Mozart family residence in Getreidegasse Alley and at Marktplatz Square in Salzburg, but it is possible that they had a Christmas tree. The custom to have a fir tree decorated with tinsel, colorful glass balls, and candles spread all over the world from Germany in the 19th century. However, there are a few surviving reports of decorated Christmas trees from the 18th century. It is perfectly possible that a cultivated, well-traveled family such as the Mozarts would have had one in the parlor. The same is true of nativity scenes. We know for a fact that Mozart was very fond of the typical Christmas beverage, punch. He got to know and appreciate punch in England in 1764, at a time when punch was unheard of in Salzburg. In a letter to his Salzburgian friend Hagenauer, Leopold Mozart enthusiastically wrote about the future favorite drink of his son and provided a recipe. And Mozart in Vienna? Wolfgang and Constance had 6 children, of whom unfortunately only 2 sons lived long enough to reach adulthood. It is highly likely that the Mozarts spent Merry Christmas celebrations with their children and possibly some friends. The Mozarts were widely known for their hospitality, and it is very likely that they would have invited some friends and students. And that was from Mozart.com, if you want to look it up. Next, I'm going to do Bob Dylan. Dylan, born Robert Allen Zimmerman, said that although Jewish, he never felt left out of Christmas as a boy growing up in Minnesota. He recalled plenty of snow, jingle bells, Christmas carolers going from house to house, sleighs in the streets, town bells ringing, nativity plays. His idea of a good Christmas dinner was roast turkey with mashed potatoes and gravy, collard greens, and all the trimmings. The songs on the Christmas album were part of my life, just like folk songs, he said. This was from 11 years ago, an article on an album that he released. Why does Christmas have the best songs? Maybe because it's so worldwide and everybody can relate to it in their own way. And again, that was from Reuters, and it was called Bob Dylan Brings Christmas Cheer to Those Without Homes. Next, let's do Alfred Hitchcock. And so this was a fact about the movie Psycho. The film, independently produced and financed by Hitchcock, was shot at Revue Studios, the same location as his television show. Psycho was shot on a tight budget of $807,000. Before shooting began in November, Hitchcock dispatched assistant director Hilton A. Green to Phoenix to scout locations and shoot the opening scene. The shot was supposed to be an aerial shot of Phoenix that slowly zoomed into the hotel window of a passionate Marion and Sam. Ultimately, the helicopter footage proved too shaky and had to be spliced with footage from the studio. Another crew filmed that day, and night footage on Highway 99 between Gorman and Fresno, California, for projection when Marion drives from Phoenix. Footage of her driving into Bakersfield to trade her car is also shown. They also provided the location shots for the scene in which she is discovered sleeping in the car by the highway patrolman. In one street scene shot in downtown Phoenix, Christmas decorations were discovered to be visible. Rather than reshoot the footage, Hitchcock chose to add a graphic to the opening scene, marking the date as Friday, December the 11th. Next, let's do Pope Francis. And so this one, so I was researching this morning. This came from Philadelphia Inquirer, and I'm definitely excerpting. And so let's start with, it started with the immigration of his grandparents. The future Pope's grandparents finally made it in February 1929, spending 2 years in Paraná before the Depression caused the paving business to founder and the brothers to separate. Giovanni, Rosa, and Mario made their way to Buenos Aires. They were out on the street with nothing, the Pope later recalled. My grandfather bought a warehouse with 2,000 pesos, which he borrowed, and my father, who was an accountant, sold goods out of a basket. Mario met Regina Zavori, the daughter of Genovese immigrants, through their parish, and they married in 1935. A year later, their eldest son, Jorge Mario, was born. On December 17, 1936. He was baptized a week later on Christmas Day. Growing up with the stories of his family's trials and fresh starts, Jorge would always have a special concern for vulnerable migrants. As cardinal, he had a close bond with the Paraguayans and Bolivians in the slums of Buenos Aires, and he has made making room for the stranger a cornerstone of his teaching as Pope, insisting that anti-immigrant countries that tighten or close their borders simply turn nearby oceans and deserts into cemeteries for those who die trying to get there. Again, that was from Philadelphia Inquirer. Next, let's do Lucille Ball. So this was an article entitled Lucy Arnez Describes Christmas with Her Mom and Dad. And it was from Christian Science Monitor in 2013. There was a lot of stress because of how hard they worked, and their marriage wasn't doing well. But Christmas was always a good time, Lucy says. Ball made their Beverly Hills house elegant, Arnez said. My mother loved the East Coast, so she tried to bring it to Beverly Hills. We always had a flocked white tree with blue lights. At night, it made it look like wintertime in the snow, Arnez said. Her Cuban-born dad added a memorable touch one particular Christmas Eve. Young Lucy awoke to the sound of clattering on the roof, followed by a man in a red suit bringing gifts into her room. As Arnez recalls, he bent over and kissed me and said, here she adapts a Cuban accent, Merry Christmas. I thought, Santa sounds just like Daddy. Years later, Ball confirmed the memory. Yes, he did that, she told her daughter. He got all liquored up and banged on the roof and got in his Santa suit with the presents and the whole thing. And then he had to open his mouth. Okay. Next, we're going to do Galileo. And And so this was in the middle of an article too. I'm excerpting to give you the point of Christmas. But as he more and more openly advocated the Copernican system, Galileo was more and more attacked for contradicting those passages in Scripture which described the sun as moving with respect to the earth. Just before Christmas in 1614, Galileo was publicly attacked in a sermon in a Florence church for allegedly having assailed the true authority of Scripture and for having meddled in theological matters. Shouting that mathematicians should not be tolerated in Christian states, the preacher even hinted that the idea of the earth moving was probably heretical. Before long, Galileo was denounced to the Inquisition. And that was an article from February 1964. Old one. Galileo brought the light of the universe into the darkness of men's minds, and so began the 4th-century saga of modern science. Next, let's cover the Three Stooges. In 1949, the 1949 short film entitled Malice in the Palace features Shemp along with Moe and Larry as each don disguises as Santa Claus and ride in a horse-drawn sleigh across the sand. This installment takes place in the Far East at the Desert Cafe Kasbah, as the Stooges play three waiters who search for the 100-carat diamond from King Rootin' Tootin's tomb. And they also had a Christmas album, originally recorded in the early 1960s. The Three Stooges, Moe, Howard, Larry Fine, and Curly Joe Dorita recorded this album of Christmas tunes. It had a bunch of different songs. Jingle Bells Drag at the Circus, All I Want for Christmas is My Two Front Teeth, We're Coming to Your Home, The Toy Store, and their version of I Want a Hippopotamus for Christmas. Charlie Chaplin, very quick fact having to do with Christmas, died at home on Christmas Day in 1977 at the age of 88. How about Andy Warhol? Here's why Andy Warhol and Christmas go very well together. Do you love Christmas? Warhol did, and he had plenty of reasons to. However, most pertinent in regards to Warhol's body of work is the culture of consumerism that has come to define the modern tradition of Christmas celebrations. Society's relationship to consumption was something that Warhol addressed extensively in his art. With his Campbell's soup cans and Brillo boxes works, among many others, Warhol turned consumer items into works of art. Warhol was also a deeply religious man, an aspect of the artist's life that is often overlooked. As the son of Slovakian immigrants, Warhol was raised as Catholic, and that came from artnet.com. It was a longer article, if you'd like to look it up. This one is also very short. And Jules Verne. I didn't find a reference to Christmas that I wanted to use, but I did find that he had written, the title was A Winter Amid the Ice and Other Thrilling Stories from 1877. And I read part of that on Project Gutenberg yesterday, and you can do the same. Okay, next we're going to tackle Julia Child. Okay, so this was an article in Food and Wine. Foodandwine.com is where I got it. The time, Christmas 1970. The place, Provence. The host, Julia Child. Who wouldn't want a seat at that table? Only one woman, the sometimes reclusive writer MFK Fisher. This year, Fisher's great-nephew, Luke Barr, finds out what she missed. And so the text from that article, and perhaps this was the reason Child chose to roast a very traditional, very French Christmas goose. As much as she was ready to break with France, she loved it deeply. Like many a holiday meal, this one was a love letter to the past, a celebration of memory. And so she cooked, stuffing the birds with chestnuts and prunes, while Paul presented the drink he'd invented for the occasion. French vermouth, Dubonnet, orange essence, and dark rum. This was the era of reverse martinis and other vermouth drinks. They raised their glasses and toasted the season and change, and the coming snow. And so that was from Luke Barr, and it was written originally and then updated in 2017. That was a good article. You might want to look it up and read the whole thing. Okay, I've got some artists here, and I've grouped them all together. Who was Claude Monet? And so what I found for him is that he had a work called Christmas Roses. It's in a private collection, and it's from 1883. And there was a snow scene at Argenteuil, and that was 1875. And I will show you graphics for all these artworks at the end of the video, the very end. And next, Leonardo Da Vinci. And this article came from Artworks online, and it was works that define Christmas in pictures. And so the Monet was also listed in this article. Another unfinished Leonardo da Vinci painting is Adoration of the Magi, painted with oil, wood panels sometime between 1481 and 1483. The painting was commissioned as an altarpiece by the San Donato a Scopeto Monastery near Florence. In 1481, Leonardo da Vinci left the painting unfinished at some time before 1483 when he went to Milan for the security of a regular income promised by the Duke of Milan. The painting depicts Mary and the child Jesus sitting. Surrounding Mary and the child Jesus are a number of men and women with ambiguous identities, and the tree of life illustrated at the back. The whole theme of the painting is about the three wise men worshiping the infant Jesus. The rocky landscape is illustrated with the background portraying the ruins of the palace of King David and combating knights on horseback as an allusion to the decline of paganism and the coming of Christianity. The technique by Da Vinci in this painting turned out to be a mark in the evolution of art in the way the figures are represented in the painting. The scene shows dynamic movements from the figures and actions surrounding Mary and the child Jesus, who are painted clearly as the centerpiece. Another technique shown in the painting is a painted method called Choroscuro, where there is a contrast of light and dark shades increase as a figure is painted closer to the ground. And that was from totallyhistory.com. And then my reference for Pablo Picasso and Christmas. Actually, he did quite a bit and a lot of artwork. And by the way, when you're researching the artists, it's very hard not to, or it's what I was finding most was things for sale. Their artwork on Christmas ornaments and postcards and Shishi museum gift shops and things like that. So I was trying to avoid those. But in an article this morning, Picasso on a postcard, Christmas dinner sketch by founder of Cubism at auction for £30,000. And that was Newsfeed Media, December 1st. Actually, that one I do have a little picture of the postcard here. Maybe I'll show you a better one in that compilation later, which I've not done yet. A charming Christmas scene hastily illustrated by artist Pablo Picasso on a postcard for his friends has emerged for sale. The pen and ink drawing done in 1919 by the Spanish painter depicts a table with a plump turkey in the middle of it, surrounded by 2 wine bottles, 4 glasses, 2 bunches of grapes, bread, bananas, and a pear. It is on the back of a postcard measuring 5 by 5, which depicts a wintry scene and the words Bonne Année, which means Happy New Year in French. Okay, this last one is a little bit longer, and in it I'm talking about both Dr. Seuss and Chuck Jones. So I've excerpted these from different sources. It was Seuss, said Geisel in a 1957 interview with Redbook. Something had gone wrong with Christmas, I realized, or more likely with me, so I wrote the story about my sour friend the Grinch to see if I could rediscover something about Christmas that obviously I'd lost. How the Grinch Stole Christmas was Dr. Seuss's easiest book to write. The Massachusetts native spent mere weeks pouring himself into the holiday hating, but later reformed Grinch who attempted to stop Christmas from coming for every who down in Whoville. Perhaps because the rhyme master was channeling his own frustrations with the commercialization of Christmas, Geisel's children's book, preceded earlier that year by another of his best-known works, The Cat in the Hat, was He has said the easiest book of my career to write. When all was said and done, if there had been any debate over whether or not his own identity was the driving force behind the Grinch's curmudgeonly ways, Geisel later removed doubt, cruising around his La Jolla, California neighborhood with vanity license plates that spelled out the word Grinch. He did include a much more subtle Easter egg within the story itself, however. Why, for 53 years I put up with it now, the Grinch laments in the book of The Who's jubilant celebrations, filled, of course, with noise. When the book was written and published, both by Random House as a book and as a feature in Redbook magazine, the writer, not so coincidentally, happened to also be 53 years old himself. Dr. Seuss was hesitant to turn the book into an animated special. 9 years after How the Grinch Stole Christmas first hit bookshelves, Warner Brothers cartoon director Chuck Jones adapted the children's book for his also famous animated December 1966 CBS television special. His path to bringing the Seuss tale to the small screen was not without obstacles. However, as Geisel was notoriously anti-Hollywood and reluctant to sell the rights to his book. Jones, having worked closely with Geisel when he served as commander of the animation department for the United States Army's first motion picture unit during World War II, was eventually able to convince his former colleague to entrust him with a personal appeal. Upon seeing Jones' drawings, Geisel thought the animator had taken a page from his book, modeling the main character after himself. "That doesn't look like the Grinch, that looks like you," Geisel reportedly told him. In an interview for a 1994 TNT television special, Jones succinctly remarked, "Well, it happens." One aspect of the small screen incarnation that was certainly all of Jones' doing was giving the Grinch his iconic green hue, as the illustrations in the original publication of Geisel's book were almost completely black and white. His idea didn't have much to do with the way he looked, or with the way he looked, or with classic Christmas colors. However, instead, Jones drew his inspiration from a series of funny coincidences. He somehow always ended up with rental cars in that particular color of green, and that was from Biography.com. So I am also going to have more of these that are going to be shared with you by members of other departments here at Lawrence Branch, and I hope you enjoy them.
Elton John. Written one morning and recorded the following afternoon, Elton John's Step Into Christmas is a perennial festive favorite. The first song written by Elton and Bernie Taupin is a standalone single. It was something of a Christmas present to thank fans after a successful year for Elton. He'd already had hits in 1973 from albums Don't Shoot Me, I'm Only the Piano Player, and Goodbye Yellow Brick Road when he decided to do something a little different. The Christmas single is a real loon about something we'd like to do a lot more of, he explained to an interview with Melody Maker. Along with the interestingly titled B-side, Ho Ho Ho, Who'd Be a Turkey at Christmas, the Christmas record was all one day's work, that day being Sunday, November 11, 1973 at Morgan Studios in London. We wanted to make an homage to Phil Spector. Part of what made Phil Spector records were the rooms and musicians in the audience, said Elton of the song, which also features Kiki D on unaccredited backing vocals. Mother Teresa. We desire to be able to welcome Jesus at Christmas time, not in a cold manger of our heart, but in a heart full of love and humility, a heart so pure, so immaculate, so warm with love for one another. Milton Hershey, Wrapper, History and Varieties. When introduced in 1907, Hershey Kisses chocolates originally were wrapped by hand. The automated wrapping machine was introduced in 1921. The original wrapper was silver-colored foil, and Hershey Kisses were only available in this single color for decades. In 1962, Hershey became one of the first companies to change its wrappers for seasonal sales. That was the first year that Kisses chocolates were available in different colored foil wrappers. Red and green and silver wrapped candies were manufactured to coincide with the Christmas season.
Hi, my name is Kim Livingston. I'm from the IT department. This is Milton Bradley. 1860s Bradley's first game, The Checkered Game of Life, had a strong moralizing purpose. Landing on negative squares like crime and idleness would move players back in life, while positive squares like honesty and bravery would move them towards happy old age. To this day, an updated version of the game remains popular, though its title has been shortened and its format changed a bit. Gambling and intemperance will no longer set you back a square.
Hi, I'm Amelia from the IT department, and today I'm talking about Jrr Tolkien. To entertain his children every Christmas, Tolkien would write a letter to them from Father Christmas. The letters detailed his adventures over the past year and developed a charming cast of characters that featured in each letter. These friends included his elf secretary, a snowman gardener, and North Pole bear.
Hi, I'm Sharon from Lawrence Reference, and the first one is Abraham Lincoln. And New Year's Day, a very popular holiday tradition for the Lincolns was hosting and attending open houses on New Year's Day, also known as Receiving Day. A part of this tradition, practiced year-round, was the presentation of calling cards. When visiting someone's home, calling cards were often placed on a silver dish or in a calling card basket. The size of a card differed on the basis of the sex of the caller. A man's card was half the size of a woman's card. And the second one is Queen Elizabeth. The most significant addition to the Christmas table during Elizabeth's reign was plum pottage, first recorded in 1573, related to the later plum pudding, which in turn would become Christmas pudding. It was a sort of soupy stew based on beef, raisins, currants, and bread, with spice if you could afford it. Pottages were a staple food for rich and poor alike, differing only in their contents. It would have been served with a number of other dishes eaten throughout the winter season, but increasingly identified with Christmas. This is from featurelearn.com.
Hi, this is Jen Crabtree from the Lawrence branch, Edgar Allan Poe. As an adult, Poe, like a lot of people, worked on Christmas Day, so there are some business letters written by him dated December 25th. Christmas was also a good time for Poe to sell his stories to gift books. In the 1830s, American publishers started issuing deluxe gift books each year around Christmas. Poe contributed to several installments of the most popular of these, The Gift, A Christmas and New Year's Present, and that's from the Poe blog. In fact, the people in Poe's time were largely responsible for shaping the way Americans celebrate Christmas today. Without them, Christmas would lack poinsettias, mistletoe, and the names of Santa's flying reindeer. You might be surprised to discover some of the ways the holidays evolved around Poe's lifetime, which is 1809 to 1849. Julius Caesar. Christmas may have come and gone for some, but many people and communities around the world are celebrating the holiday in January. Join the festivities and keep some gifts handy as we find out more about the Orthodox Christmas Day. Many Orthodox Christians around the world celebrate Christmas Day on or near January 7th. This is because their churches use a different calendar to figure out when their holidays are. Isn't there just one calendar? Sort of. In 45 BC, Julius Caesar of Rome created the Julian calendar. According to this calendar, Christmas falls 13 days after the other Christmas that takes place on December 25th. But they both celebrate the exact same thing. Orthodox Christians still use this calendar today for religious holidays. For countries like Egypt, Greece, Russia, and Ukraine, Orthodox Christmas Day is a public holiday. While it's not a holiday in Canada, many Orthodox Christians throughout the country also celebrate the day. Roald Dahl. It's a great shame that Roald Dahl never actually wrote any full-length Christmas stories. The subject is the perfect territory for him. Christmas delivers all the trappings of a good morality tale, with its mixture of greedy children, stupid adults spoiling them, and in Father Christmas, a central figure who is a mixture of warmth and generosity on the one hand, and mischievousness and malevolence on the other. Come to think of it, he did write that story in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, with Willy Wonka as the Santa figure. The factory, with its elf-like workers and rooms stacked full of staggering bounty for all the children of the world, is rather like the North Pole workshop. And in Wonka's surprising generosity to the poverty-stricken Charlie Bucket, we have an echo of Scrooge and Tiny Tim. But if you want something more explicitly Christmassy, then you have to turn to a poem he wrote for Great Ormond Street Hospital, with a majestic illustration by Quentin Blake. Where Art Thou, Mother Christmas? Introduces us to the real force behind the holiday. Please welcome the hardest working woman in Greenland, Mother Christmas. Where art thou, Mother Christmas? I only wish I knew why Father should get all the praise and no one mentions you. I'll bet you buy the presents and wrap them large and small, while all the time that rotten swine pretends he's done it all. So hail to Mother Christmas, who shoulders all the work, and down with Father Christmas, that unmitigated jerk. And that is from the Roald Dahl Treasury.
Hi, I'm Jamie from the Lawrence branch. Mark Twain, A Letter from Santa Claus is a short piece of humorous fantasy fiction by the American author Samuel Langhorne Clemens, who wrote professionally under the pseudonym of Mark Twain. It was written in 1875 for Twain's then 2-year-old daughter, Susie Clemens. It takes the form of a letter written on Christmas morning to Susie Clemens by Santa Claus. In the letter, Santa Claus apologizes to Susie Clemens for not having been able to bring her all of the presents that she requested. He goes on to state that he will be returning shortly to deliver one more gift. Although Susie Clemens will be able to talk to Santa Claus when he comes back that morning, she is told that neither she nor anybody else in the house will be allowed to see him. Santa Claus gives detailed instructions that Susie Clemens and other members of the household will have to follow so that he can deliver her present while remaining unseen. Woodrow Wilson. President Woodrow Wilson had a strong Christian upbringing that he carried throughout his life. We know that he had the first Christmas tree put up and decorated in the White House when he was President of the United States. The President and his family can be pictured spending their first Christmas in the White House with Christmas presents and all the trimmings. Wilson was accustomed to having gatherings with the attendance of many intellectuals and family. As president, he also wanted to have a national Christmas tree lighting ceremony, and in 1913, the first year the president was in office, he was able to have a celebration with a Christmas tree lighting ceremony on Christmas Eve at the Capitol. The Rolling Stones. You think with all those hits and over 5 decades of producing music, they'd have done a Christmas album like so many other artists do. However, that wasn't something they were interested in. While they don't have a record or any official Christmas songs, band members have done a song or two, and they do have some winter-themed songs and a neat hidden track related to Christmas. Here are the songs they've done. On their album, Their Satanic Majesty's Request, there is a hidden coda titled Cosmic Christmas that occurs following Sing This All Together, See What Happens, where slowed down it becomes We Wish You a Merry Christmas. While not officially a Christmas song, Winter does mention Christmas. Mick Jagger did a song with Dave Stewart and Joss Stone for the movie Alfie, Lonely Without You, this Christmas. Keith Richards recorded an old classic, Run Rudolph Run, in 1979.
Hi, my name is Elena Miles. I'm a shopper at Lawrence Library. Right here is Bono. UT covered Christmas, Baby Please Come Home, a song originally written by Phil Spector. The song was recorded during the tour in Glasgow, Scotland. Doreen Love was present to contribute backing vocals in the song 1987. Here's a quote by Bono. The idea that there's a force of love and logic behind the universe is overwhelming to start with. You believe it, actually maybe even far-fetched to start with, but the idea that some love and logic would choose to describe itself as a baby born in straw and poverty is genius, and brings me to my knees literally. To me, as a poet, I am just in awe of that. It makes some sort of poetic sense. It's the thing that makes me a believer, though it didn't dawn on me for many years. Joan of Arc. In the days when Jonah lived, and the Christmas celebration continued for 12 days until the Feast of Epiphany on January 6th, which was the day of greatest celebration in medieval times. For those who don't already know, the celebration of Epiphany in Christian traditions refers to the revelation of God to many in the person of Jesus Christ. And the central part of the celebration features the arrival of the wise men who were led to the baby Jesus by a shining star. One could only wonder about how Saint Joan of Arc celebrated Christmas, and there is unfortunately nothing in the historical records. However, there is little doubt that Christmas would have been a very special time for Joan of Arc, for intense love and devotion to God. While Jonah was growing up in a small town at Domremy, she most likely would have attended at least one worship service, and possibly more on Christmas Day, at the little church of St. Remy, located just next door to her house. All this can be found online at St. Joan of Arc blogspot.com. And lastly, the Grimm brothers. The Elves and the Shoemaker, Brother Grimm. The Elves and the Shoemaker is part of the collection of German original fairy tales, first published in 1812 by Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm. The Brothers Grimm. The collection is commonly known today as Grimm's Fairy Tales. The theme is well known, one throughout European folklore. There are many warning stories about what would happen if a recipient of fairy help should offer clothes to his or her benefactor. According to the tales, pixies and fairies alike consider clothing to be a form of bondage, and see any kind offers or new clothes as a way to enslave the fairies.
Hi, I'm Anne from the Lawrence branch of the library, and the book I'm going to show you here is called Who Was William Shakespeare? And here's some information about him. Shakespeare and Christmas from the No Sweat Shakespeare blog. In all of his works, Shakespeare uses the word Christmas only 3 times. Why is there so little of Christmas in the works of Shakespeare? Well, the answer is simple, really. The way we celebrate that jolly season is effusive, full, and sumptuous, but its roots are in the 1840s. Before that, it was hardly celebrated, at least not in the way we celebrate it today. Easter was the big Christian festival, a festival of grief, followed swiftly by a parallel festival of joy, as the Savior first dies, then rises again on the third day. The Bible isn't clear about the time of Jesus' birth, but it is about the season of rebirth. It's the time when all nature wakes from the death of winter, at least in the Northern Hemisphere. Over the centuries, the idea of Christmas developed to a point where it became a 12-day festival, starting on Christmas Day, moving on to the second day of Christmas, St. Stephen's Day or Boxing Day, and culminating on the 12th night. In Elizabethan England, 12th night was the occasion for theatrical performances at the royal court. It is a matter of convention that Shakespeare wrote his wonderful play, Twelfth Night, for the last night of the Christmas season. It's a practical, unimaginative title and has nothing to do with Christmas, referring only to the time for which its performance was intended. Shakespeare does give us one description of Christmas, however, on the frozen battlements of Elsinore in the play Hamlet. Some say that ever 'gainst that season comes wherein our Saviour's birth is celebrated, the bird of dawning singeth all night long, and then they say, no spirit dare stir abroad. The nights are wholesome, then no planet strike, no fairy tale takes, nor witch hath power to charm. So hallowed and so gracious is the time. It's a description of a highly spiritual atmosphere, a hallowed time in which everything evil is refused admission. There is nothing of the jollity that we are so familiar with. There are also several descriptions of midwinter scenes in Shakespeare, but they aren't connected with Christmas, although they are the inspiration for Christmas card pictures. Our next book is about Jesus, and this is what it looks like. On December 25th, Christians around the world will gather to celebrate Jesus' birth. Joyful carols, special liturgies, brightly wrapped gifts, festive foods, these all characterize the feast today, at least in the Northern Hemisphere. But just how did the Christmas festival originate? How did December 25th come to be associated with the birthday of Jesus? The Bible offers few clues. Celebrations of Jesus' nativity are not mentioned in the Gospels or Acts. The date is not given, not even the time of year. The biblical reference to shepherds tending their flocks at night when they hear the noise of the birth of Jesus, Luke 2:8, might suggest the spring lambing season in the cold month of December. On the other hand, sheep might well have been corralled, yet most scholars would urge caution about extracting such a precise but incidental detail from a narrative whose focus is theological rather than calendrical. The extra-biblical evidence from the 1st and 2nd century is equally spare. There is no mention of birth celebrations in the writings of early Christian writers, such as Arnez, 130 to 200, Common Era CE, or Tertullian, 160 to 225. Origen of Alexandria, 160 to 264, goes so far as to mock Roman celebrations of birth anniversaries, dismissing them as pagan practices, a strong indication that the birth of Jesus was not marked with similar festivities at that place and time. As far as we can tell, Christmas was not celebrated at all at this point. In the end, we are left with the question, how did December 25th become Christmas? We cannot be entirely sure. Elements of the festival that developed from the 4th century until modern times may well derive from pagan traditions. Yet the actual date might really derive more from Judaism, from Jesus' death at Passover, and from the rabbinic notion that great things might be expected again and again at the same time of the year, and from paganism. Then again, in this notion of cycles and the return of God's redemption, we may perhaps also be touching upon something that the pagan Romans, who celebrated Sol Invictus, and many other people since, would have understood and claimed for their own too. And this information comes from the internet site biblicalarchaeology.org.
Okay, a few final biographies here. The first one is going to be Lewis Carroll. And it's Christmas Greetings. The text below was first published as a separate leaflet in 1884. The poem was incorporated into the People's edition of the Alice books in 1887, and subsequently into standard editions beginning in 1897. And this, by the way, is from AliceInWonderland.net. From a fairy to a child, lady dear, if fairies may, for a moment lay aside cunning tricks and elfish play, 'tis at happy Christmas tide. We have heard the children say, gentle children whom we love, long ago on Christmas Day came a message from above. Still, as Christmas tide comes round, they remember it again. Echoes still the joyful sound, peace on earth, goodwill to men. Yet the hearts must childlike be, where such heavenly guests abide, unto children in their glee. All the year is Christmas tide. Thus forgetting tricks and play for a moment, lady dear, we would wish you, if we may, Merry Christmas, Glad New Year. And that was Christmas 1887. Okay, next we're gonna do Ben Franklin. And sorry about that. Below is an excerpt from Poor Richard's Almanac by Benjamin Franklin relating to the celebration of Christmas. How many observe Christ's birthday? How few his precepts? 'Tis easier to keep holidays than commandments. And that was 1743. Another historical figure. We have George Washington. How am I going to tie this one in with Christmas? Washington's crossing of the Delaware River on December 25th, 1776, allowed his army to strike the Hessians at Trenton the next morning. General George Washington's commitment to cross the Delaware River on Christmas 1776 foreshadowed the many hardships faced, as well as the eventual victory of the Continental Army during the American Revolution. Okay, next. This is going to be Christmas, J.K. Rowling. And it's from blog bookstellyoui.com. Christmas as portrayed in the Harry Potter series, part 1 of this person's article. Her name is Leah Dobrinska, and this was a 2017 article. In each of the 7 Harry Potter books, J.K. Rowling treats us to a glimpse of Harry's Christmas holiday. And let's face it, as Hogwarts is one of the best literary locations ever, then Hogwarts at Christmas time is really something special. Of course, that's not to say that Harry's Christmases are always idyllic. However, they are always significant to the story. And what better way to get into the Christmas spirit than by diving into the Potter series? Then perhaps you can pick which book suits your mood this season and either read it again or find a particular edition to add to your collection. Grab a glass of butterbeer, pull on your coziest hand-knit sweater, and read along as we present Christmas with Harry. And so this is the first one, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, Sorcerer's Stone to us. And let's see here. We experienced the holidays at Hogwarts for the first time right alongside Harry, and Rowling's description of the seasonal scenes doesn't disappoint. The hall looked spectacular. Festoons of holly and mistletoe hung all around the walls, and no less than 12 towering Christmas trees stood around the room, some sparkling with tiny icicles, some glittering with hundreds of candles. If that doesn't put you in the mood to decorate your own halls, I'm not sure what will. Likewise, our hearts are warmed by the love the Weasley family shows Harry on Christmas morning. Molly gifts him with none other than a trademark family sweater. Speaking of treasured gifts, we see the invisibility cloak come into the play for the first time, and we all know how significant that gift ends up being as Harry's story progresses. For the boy who lived, who has never had Christmas dinner to speak of, the Hogwarts feast is enough to make his eyes bulge. 100 fat roast turkeys, mountains of roast and boiled potatoes, platters of chipolatas, tureens of buttered peas, silver boats of thick, rich gravy and cranberry sauce, and stacks of wizard crackers every few feet along the table. All of that said, it's no surprise Harry deems it his best Christmas day ever. That's chapter 12, Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone, Sorcerer's Stone. And you can look up that article. She goes on and covers all the rest of the books. Okay, next. Steven Spielberg is our subject. And this is about An American Tail, 1986. Steven Spielberg's 1986 allegory for the Jewish immigrant experience became the highest-grossing non-Disney animated film of its time. Steven Spielberg's first animated production tells the story of plucky young Fievel Mouskowitz. The film opens with a Hanukkah celebration where Papa Mouskowitz gifts Fievel his hat before they embark to America. Next, let's do Bruce Springsteen. Springsteen's Santa Claus is Coming to Town was recorded in 1975, to be specific, during a seasonal tour stop in Greenvale, New York. It was released as a promo to radio stations in 1981 and finally saw official release in 1985 as the flip side to the My Hometown single. Next subject is Jim Henson. And let's try this. My arm is getting a little shaky here, if you couldn't tell. A Muppet Family Christmas is a Christmas television special starring Jim Henson's Muppets. It first aired on December 16th, 1987 on ABC here in the US. This is one of the very few Muppet productions to feature Muppets associated with all 4 of the major Muppet franchises as a crossover. And that was The Muppet Show, Sesame Street, Fraggle Rock, and Muppet Babies, who are seen as actual puppets here instead of their animated counterparts. This special also features an on-screen guest cameo by Jim Henson, and he can be seen in the kitchen doing dishes with Sprocket towards the end of the special. Okay. My next one is Elvis. Elvis Presley cemented the status of Blue Christmas as a rock and roll holiday classic by recording it for his 1957 LP, Elvis's Christmas Album. Blue Christmas is a Christmas song written by Billy Hayes and J.W. Johnson and most famously performed by Elvis Presley. It was first recorded by Doyle Odell back in 1948. It is a tale of unrequited love during the holidays and is a long-standing staple of Christmas music, especially in the country genre. Okay, music. A little bit later in time, we've got the Beatles. The Beatles sent out spoken and musical messages on flexi-disc to members of their official fan clubs in the United Kingdom and the United States each Christmas from 1963 through 1969. Conceived as a means to appease fan club members whose letters, due to their sheer volume, were not always being answered in a timely manner, the records included the Beatles' messages of thanks to loyal Beatle people, along with skits, Christmas carols, and original compositions. 1963, the Beatles' Christmas record, the first Christmas recording from the Beatles featured several renditions of the traditional carol Good King Wenceslas and individual messages from the four, ending with a closing chorus of Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. Okay, and my last one that I've got here is I've grouped the Kennedys together. Jacqueline and JFK. Before John F. Kennedy took the fateful trip to Dallas in November 1963, the President and First Lady ordered 500 Christmas cards that would never be sent. The cards, which were ordered from Hallmark, featured a color photograph of an 18th century Neapolitan creche that had been displayed in the East Room of the White House, according to Vintage News. A religious image had never before been put on a White House Christmas card. Inside the cards was an embossed seal of an American eagle with an olive branch in one talon and arrows in the other, and the message, "With our wishes for a blessed Christmas and Happy New Year." Some of the cards only offered a New Year's greeting. And that was from irishcentral.com. Okay, so thank you so much for listening to this. I hope you've enjoyed as well as I have listening. This was really a terrific project for a librarian. I've been a librarian for, I'll be honest, 3 decades now. And as I was doing this project, it amazed me how quickly you can find answers now. And in the old days, this would have meant looking through indexes and reading a lot more passages and not just using the find button and typing in your terms. So I had great fun making this. And happy holidays, everybody. I will see you next time. Thanks again for listening.